I'm happy to join with you today and we'll go down in the history as the greatest demonstration of freedom in the history of our nation. These are some of the famous words from the I Have a Dream speech by Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech is considered one of the most inspirational speeches ever told. First, we will talk about why we have chosen the speaker. Second, we'll talk about the significance of the speech. Third, we'll talk about the use and communication concept from the text and lecture that apply to the speech and the speaker. And finally, we'll talk about why he inspires us. I will begin by talking about why we have chosen MLK as our inspirational speaker. Martin Luther King Jr. was an American clergy activist and prominent leader in the African American civil rights movement. Which are reasons why we chose the speaker. He's reliable. He is best known for being an iconic figure in the advancement of civil rights in the United States around the world. He is a Baptist minister in the civil rights early in his career. He led the 1955 Montgomery bus boycott and helped found the Southern Christian Leadership Conference in 1957, serving as the first president. And in 1964, King became the youngest person to receive the Nobel Peace Prize for his work to end racial segregation and racial discriminations through civil disobedience. Second, one of his most memorable speeches, I Have a Dream speech. I Have a Dream is a 17-minute public speech in which he called for racial equality and ended discrimination. King's delivery of the speech on August 28, 1963, from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial during the March of Washington for Jobs and Freedom, was a defining moment of the American Civil Rights Movement, delivered to over 200,000 civil rights supporters. The speech was ranked the top of the speeches of the 20th century in 1999 polls. At the end of the speech, King departed for his prepared text and partly improvised preparation of the I Have a Dream speech. King's main legacy was to secure the process of the civil rights in the United States, which he enables more Americans to reach their potential. He is frequently referred as a human right icon today. His name and legacy have often been invoked since his death, as people have debated his likely position as various moderns in the issues. His wife, Coretta Scott King, also followed in his footsteps. The same year that Martin Luther King was assassinated, she established the King Center in Atlanta, Georgia, dedicated to preserving his legacy around the world. King's one of his final speeches he gave was, I'd like someone to mention that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to give his life serving others. I'd like for someone to say that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to love someone. I want you to say that the day I tried to be right on the war question, I want you to be able to say that I did try to feed the hungry. I want you to be able to say that the day that I did try in my life to clothe those who were naked. I want you to say that the day I did try in my life to visit those who were in prison. And I want you to say that I tried to love and severe humanity. Yes, if you want to say that I was a drum major, say that I was a drum major for justice. Say that I was a drum major for peace. I was a drum major for rightness and all the other shallow things that will not matter. That was one of his speeches that he wants to be recognized by, that he gave out. Now Nick will be talking about the significance of the I Have a Dream speech and what impact it made on America.
At the 1963 rally for civil rights in Washington, D.C., at the Lincoln Memorial, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his memorable speech called the I Have a Dream speech. However, listening to the speech, it is clear that the speech was not about a dream. The speech was about freedom. King himself, in the opening calls, the rally the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. He cited the evils of segregation and discrimination to the Negro who, 100 years later, after emancipation, still is not free. He cited the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, and spoke of them as a promissory note by which all men, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. He declared that America has defaulted on this promissory note, and so far as her citizens of color are concerned, that America had given the Negro people a bad check. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Injustice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. So we've come to cash this check, a check that will give us, upon demand, the riches of freedom and the security of justice. Not only did Martin Luther King have a significance on America, but he had a humongous impact on the Congress as well. Martin Luther King's speech, "I Have a Dream," brought even a greater attention to the civil rights movement, which had been going on for many years. King's speech was part of the March on Washington, a gathering of more than 250,000 people in the nation's capital. African Americans still were not treated as equals. Marches like this one and ones earlier in Detroit and other cities called attention to this fact. The speech was given in the shadow of the Lincoln Memorial, the monument honoring President Abraham Lincoln, who issued the Emancipation Proclamation Act, which freed slaves in the southern states. By giving his speech there, King was wanting to call attention to how things were so terrible a century before during the Civil War, and how some things hadn't changed so much.